guys, welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to be doing part 1 of 2. It's going to be a 2-part video because it's really long. But we're going to do part 1 and it's all about products that I use that pretty much everybody in the beauty community uses for, you know, doing a whole look. So today I'm going to be discussing just the things that go strictly on your face. Nothing eyes, that's in the second part, so watch the second part of this video to get this going on. So let's start with what I start my routine with. So I use this one right here. This is the Neutrogena, I believe, combination skin, and it is oil free because I tend to be a little bit more oily, especially around the T-zone, which is this right here. That forms a T, which is why it's called a T-zone. But down here, I tend to be a little dry. So using something like this combination skin helps both parts of my face kind of adjust themselves. This gets moisturized. This does not receive extra oils that it does not need. So usually I like to do that just so that all of the foundation can, you know, sit nice and I guess hydrated in my skin. It doesn't feel dry, it doesn't tug. So usually start with a little bit of moisturizer. If you are not a person who uses moisturizer, completely fine. You can skip that step because you are going to put something else on your face, and that is primer. So primer creates an extra layer between your skin and the makeup, so it lasts longer. And again, depending on what kind of primer you use, you can use matte, you can use dewy, it'll give your face that finish. So for example, I have a couple of them right here. This one is by NYX. It is a Photo Loving Primer Anti-Redness. And the reason it's anti-redness, it's because of the green tint that it has. I tend to be a little bit red in the face. I'm always kind of flushed. This helps me kind of reduce that redness so that I can put my makeup on and it doesn't have that red undertone to me. This one is just a regular, this is I believe Wet n Wild. Actually one of, it's a pretty inexpensive one. It's about $5, but it's definitely something to try, especially if you're a beginner, because this is really, it's like a cream. So let's take a look here. So it's like a cream and it dissolves as one, and then, you know, you'll blend it into your skin, and this goes all over your skin. Everywhere that your foundation is going to touch, that's where you put it. I usually tend to start at the face and kind of go out and even down to my neck and chest area if I'm going to use something that low cut. So once it dries, as you can see, it doesn't, there's no streaks, there's no stickiness, it's pretty smooth. So this actually fills in all the like pores and fine lines in your face, and it helps you put your foundation on without any issues. So again, if you use, if you don't use any primer now, I suggest going to the store, getting one of these really inexpensive ones. Again, this one's about $5. This one, I believe it's a little bit more on the like $10 range. Still not bad. And if you want to make a good commitment, like something that is going to last you a really long time, I would suggest going with the Benefit Porefessional. It's a green little bottle. Unfortunately, I don't have mine right now, but it's a green little bottle, a little bigger than this one, probably about this big. However, that one is on the little pricier side. I believe it's $30 for just a regular sized one, but I definitely do recommend it. It's one of the best primers that I use personally. It really does fill in everything and gives you that nice, like, blurred out look. So again, I start with the moisturizing my skin and I move on to primer. And again, it's up to you whether you want to use a color correcting primer. There are more than just a green one. There is, I believe, a peachy one and an orange one and a purple one, if I'm not mistaken. And those have different colors for different reasons. Again, the green one is for the red in your face. If you are red and flushed naturally, just like I am when I'm not wearing makeup, this is your go-to right here. If you have normal skin, you don't really see the point of having a color corrector, then you should probably use something like this with no color, no base, no nothing. This one doesn't leave your face green, so don't think you're gonna be looking like a zombie. You're not. It's just like reduce that. But again, love both of these products. They're really great. My favorite one, however, has to be the $30 one, which is the Porefessional by Benefit. Again, if you are willing to make that commitment, you know, if you are willing to make that commitment in really good quality, then I definitely suggest going for that. So let's move on to the only color corrector that I really use, which is this one right here. It's by e.l.f. As you can see, again, it is green, sort of like this primer. And again, reason being is I tend to be a little bit red in the face most of the time when I'm not wearing makeup. So this helps me correct that redness. Again, every single color corrector has its purpose. Green cancels out red. It all has to do with like the color wheel. So if you look at the color wheel, green is directly across from red. Those cancel each other out, just like purple is directly across from, I believe it's like purple's across from like yellow, and orange is across from blue. So it all depends again on what you're trying to color correct. If you're trying to do the bags under your eyes and you have a little blue to them, I would suggest going with something a little bit peachy, something like this, but like a peachy color. If your face is a little dull, kind of yellowy and kind of just really tired looking, I suggest going with something in the purple side. That'll brighten you up from the inside out, sort of. So once you put on that makeup, you won't get that yellow like undertone. You'll get a nice like pop of like brilliance, if you will, because they cancel each other out. So, all right, so up next we do have a concealer. Concealers are used mainly to cover any dark spots on your face, any, I guess like the sunspots that some people get, the under eye bags, any blemishes that you might have. This is a great way to conceal them, especially if you use something like a color corrector before. This will definitely end up blocking out any color that you don't want showing from, you know, before your foundation. This I also use to highlight my face when I'm doing contouring and highlighting. I will show you that in a couple of steps. Think of this as a foundation, but a little bit thicker, and you would need something a little bit lighter. So I would suggest going with a shade or two lighter than your actual skin tone. Reason being is you don't want to cover up that with the same color foundation. It'll just look equally as dark. You want to brighten up those spots, specifically right underneath your eyes where you might be a little tired, you might have a little bit, you know, of darkness under there. This would be great for that. This one, I believe it's the Maybelline Instant Age Rewind, and this is in the color Fair. This is actually quite light for me. Let me show you. So as you can see, that is definitely not the shade of my skin. However, I do use it to brighten up some parts of my face when you highlight and contour. So this you use for any blemishes, for any under eye circles, for any spots that you don't want showing, especially if you use something like a color corrector beforehand. You'll put this on, you'll blend it out real nice, and then this right here will do the trick of canceling everything out completely, so that when you put on your foundation, it's a blank canvas and you can work with, you know, like perfect skin basically. So this one I believe is in the like $11 range. This actually is a dupe to the Tarte Shape Tape, which is really, really good. It's really thick. It's a really bright formula. It's great. However, it is a little bit pricey. For beginners, I would suggest sticking with something like this. I actually use this in my everyday and my like glams. Again, you're gonna need something a little bit lighter than yourself. So for my really fair ladies, you will have to use something like light, which I believe is way lighter than this. This is, as you can see, has more of a pinky tone to it. That one's a little bit just kind of white. So for girls that are my complexion, and right now I actually kind of have a tan, so, you know, I would suggest going with something like Fair. If you are dark skinned or olive toned, I would suggest going with something a little bit more towards the, I guess, yellowy side. That'll help your skin, you know, really pop. You can find, I believe e.l.f. has some really good ones. I know that Maybelline has, it's not a super wide range for Maybelline, but there is a range for like my olive tone girls. Now, if you are dark skinned, you can try, I know there's Black Radiance who has a really good concealers, and there's Milani too. They cater a lot to dark skin, so definitely check them out. They're drugstore. You can find them at Walgreens, and I believe you can find them at Target as well. I have tried some of their products. They are really good. They're not really my shade, so I haven't tried any, I guess, concealers to tell you that, you know, they're great, but you should definitely check them out. I've heard reviews on them online and they just rave about it. So, you know, it's worth a shot. And if not, you can definitely go to something like Sephora and, you know, invest in something a little bit more pricey. But again, you don't necessarily have to do the concealing step, especially if you have like kind of flawless skin, which I feel like a lot of people do. They just don't give themselves enough credit, if I'm quite honest. But yeah, if you have like that perfect skin, skip this step until you get to the highlighting and contour, which we will get into after we do foundation. All right, so let's talk a little bit about foundation. So for those of you who aren't sure what foundation is, if you are very, very new, foundation comes in both liquid and powder form. So it depends on what kind of finish you like. There are different finishes. There is the matte, which I use, which basically just kind of sucks all the moisture out of your skin. That sounds really like harsh, but it's not like that. It just leaves you with a very flat canvas that you can shape and mold into whatever you like. For something a little bit more sheer, then you would go with a powder foundation. And let me see if I can open this without making a mess. But a powder foundation, which kind of comes in a compact like this, you would take a very fluffy brush like the one I showed you in the video before this one, and you would swirl it around and just kind of buff it all over your face. Again, you are not going to get the same coverage that you get with powder foundation that you get with a full cover liquid foundation. It's really hard to say what I prefer as far as foundation goes. It really just depends on the day. Usually I go for the matte stuff. I like to look very, I guess, not shiny, as I'm sure most of us do. But if you are more into the natural look, I would suggest going with something not matte. I would suggest going with a dewy or a semi-dewy finish. That tends to look a little bit brighter on the skin. It leaves a little bit of, I want to say almost like a satin finish to your face, so that you're not just kind of flat and, you know, you don't have anything to really work with. This is a full coverage foundation. I actually really love this formula. This is the Fit Me Matte and Poreless in the color Rich Tan. Again, I am a little tan from the summer, but so it's color 238. And this, they have some that are for like dry skin and some that are for oily skin. This one is from normal to oily, which is me, because most of my face is normal. Some parts of it are oily, so I'd stick to something like this. But again, it depends on what you like, what finish you like, what you're going for. If you're going for something quick and easy and you only have like 10 minutes to get out of the house, then powder is your best friend. You can grab it, buff it, and then go. However, if you do have a little bit more time, I would suggest going with something like this if you want that full coverage finish where it leaves you looking kind of like a porcelain doll. This does tend to get a little bit cakey if you pound on too much, so I would suggest going light, starting light, and then kind of working your way from there. You could use a brush or that beauty sponge that I showed you again in the last video. Completely up to you. I usually go with this and a beauty blender and kind of go all over the face to get that nice, clean, just very matte finish. Okay, so moving on to contour and highlighting. I use foundation sticks or concealing sticks, as well as just a lighter concealer. So with these, you want to apply them right after your foundation. You don't want to apply powder before that, and you don't want to apply any kind of setting, you don't want any powder on your face basically, because this will then not budge and then you'll just have a mess on your hands. So again, go from foundation to contour, especially if you're doing cream contour. There is such a thing as a palette. I don't own one. I don't like the formulas that I've tried. They tend to be a little bit too oily for me and a little too orange for me. So I usually go to the store and get some concealers actually, and use that as my contour and highlight. So again, as I was saying in the previous couple of notes before this, was that I use the the concealers to highlight. The way you highlight depends on your face shape. Not everybody highlights the same. Not everybody likes to bring out, you know, the same features. So that is completely up to you. I will leave a link down below for you to check out and see what your face shape is and how you can contour and highlight. However, I'm going to tell you how I do it, which is usually down the bridge of the nose, a little bit right here on the forehead. I do kind of like triangles right here in this area, and then on my chin. Reason being is those are the areas that I want to bring out to the light. That's why I highlight them. The light hits it, it reflects it back, and you get that being prominent. Now the things that I contour, those are the things that I want to kind of recede, maybe hide, and not exactly hide because you're not hiding it, it's still there, but you're just minimizing it. So that you would have to take something a little bit darker than yourself. This one again I use because I'm a little dark because of the summer, but I do have this one which is my winter shade, and as you can see it's definitely a lot lighter than the one that I use for the summer. But again, you take this and you, depending again on what you want to kind of mold yourself, I usually do right underneath the cheeks, so right here, and the easiest way to do that is if you look at the top of your ear, like this little part right here, and you do a straight line down, like where is that going, right? That's gonna be the hollow of your cheek. You can also kind of just using 2 fingers kind of go in and like touch your face, and where you dip in, that's right there, that's where you want to put this right here, the contour. I also do the sides of my jaw, just because, you know, I want to have a nice like defined jaw when I'm looking straight away at you guys. And I also do it on the sides of my nose. This is very popular for people who have wider noses, bigger noses. You can actually make the nose look a little bit more narrow, a little bit more pointy. If you get really good at it, you can completely transform the shape of your face. That's not something I like to do. So I usually just go for something a little bit more natural, follow the line of your nose. I wouldn't suggest going all the way down here this way because then it just looks weird. So I usually tend to go down to about here, and then I kind of do this. I kind of bring it out. Reason being that it's just the way the light falls, and once you see it in the light, it looks a little bit more natural than if you were to go here, because nobody's nose actually has shadows like going all the way down to their nostrils. It's just not natural. So again, this for contour, take a shade or 2 darker than what you are, and for highlighting, take a shade or 2 lighter than what you are. For my girls with darker skin, if you have really dark skin, I don't suggest trying to contour with just like, you know, something like this. I believe with Maybelline, this is the, let me see, this one right here. This one is the darkest they go. I feel like it's a little too orange for some skin tones. So for my really dark skin girls, I would suggest doing some highlight, some strobing. It would look less harsh than you trying to contour with something that is not your color, that doesn't match you. So I would suggest grabbing some liquid highlighter or just regular powder highlighter and getting those cheekbones really, really nice and highlighted, and that way it makes the illusion of you having synced in cheeks. Again, this is if you are really dark skinned and can't find something in the drugstore or, you know, in Sephora or anything like that that has your skin tone or, you know, is 2 shades darker. Although I know that it's a little pricey, you can try foundation to do the same thing. I would suggest trying something like Rihanna's Fenty foundation. I know she goes from extreme to extreme when it comes to the shade range, so definitely check her out if you want to spend the money. But if not, I would just suggest getting that nice highlight going, and that should carve your cheeks naturally right out. Alright, so let's move on to the setting powders or finishing powders. They are not the same thing. So let's start with the setting powder. The setting powder is something that will help you set your foundation, your liquid foundation. I wouldn't use this if you use powder foundation. You don't need to do that. That would make it kind of look dusty, and I don't recommend that. So this is only if you're doing liquid foundation. If you're doing liquid foundation, this right here is going to be your best friend to make sure that it doesn't go anywhere, it doesn't smudge when you rub it. and it makes sure that you're kind of kept that oil, that you keep that oil under control if you are oily like myself. This one, it's the Airspun Loose Face Powder. It's very, very, very dusty, but it comes with a puff, as you can see. And usually this I don't place all over my skin. I just place it in the areas that I do tend to have a little bit more trouble. Again, that would be under my eyes in this area right here, right here in the forehead, down the bridge of the nose, on the chin, and you know, just pretty much the middle part of the head, like my face. This is actually something that will also help seal that like contour and highlight thing that you did the step before. So you would leave that on there. This is referred to as baking. This is what's known as baking in the makeup community. So baking is when you take some setting powder and you either grab a beauty blender. If it's you know, damp, you can use that on this powder. It won't cake up, it won't do anything weird. You would take some powder and you would hit yourself right here, right underneath, and you'll leave that powder there for a good 10-15 minutes. You know, you don't have to leave it for that long. I usually don't. I usually take about maybe 5 to 7 minutes. You leave it there so that it kind of sinks in your skin, really gets in there and sets everything, and so you're not shiny, or you know, it doesn't crease or it doesn't do anything weird after you put your foundation on. So this, I believe you can find at Walmart. You can find, I don't know if you can find it at Target, to be honest, but I know that you can find it at Walmart and I think Walgreens. This is about $6, and it's really, really good. It comes in a couple of colors. I just have the translucent one. I suggest getting a translucent one if you are in the fair to olive range. If you are within the, I guess, a medium tone range to a dark range, I wouldn't suggest getting something I would suggest getting something translucent or something with a yellow hue to it. There is something called banana powder or a yellow, you know, setting powder that will help you ladies get that same effect of being a little bit brighter, and it doesn't make you look ashy, because I know sometimes these, even for light-skinned people, it makes them look ashy. And I know that I've had a couple of friends who've tried this and haven't particularly liked it, because it does give you that it's kind of like a powdery, obviously it's powder, so it gives you a powdery finish, but it looks powdery even after you sweep it off and kind of blend it in. So you can look into e.l.f. I know e.l.f. has some banana setting powder. It's actually really great. I actually have the translucent version of this, and I'll show you this. This is actually the high definition finishing powder, which again is not the same as this. This is just solely for baking, setting, making sure that everything kind of stays in its place. You can also use this, let's say if you were to put blush on and you go a little crazy on the blush and now it just looks like a hot pink mess on your face, you can do something that's called veiling. So you would take some translucent powder on a brush, on like a really fluffy brush, and you will buff it out. And that will help kind of diminish that color. It'll help blend it out and make it nice and even instead of having, you know, a harsh thing. Again, this is if you mess it up, or if you put too much highlight on and you're just like, you know, shining for the gods, but that wasn't what you were intending to do, then again, I would veil with something like this by just taking a fluffy brush and going over it until you are satisfied with the, I guess, coverage that you do have. Now let's move on to this high definition powder, which is a finishing powder, which is not the same as this. So this right here, and I'm gonna actually open it away from me because it's quite dusty. This right here is a very, very, very fine powder. And I'm not sure if you're gonna catch that, but it's a very fine powder. It's translucent, and if you touch it, it almost feels, it's very silky. This I use when I'm absolutely done with all of the products on my face, and I'm talking about everything. Reason being, this will put your face kind of to rest. Not like this one. This one you will sweep it off and it'll be great. This one kind of blends in with everything else that you've already put in there, and it just helps put it together. I would suggest getting something like this if you are going to take some pictures, if you're going to be on camera It's very good for, you know, the kind of camera lighting. However, if you do not blend this enough on your face, you will get some flashback. Flashback, for those of you who don't know, is when you take a picture and you have your powder on your face and it, you know, it'll flash, and that will reflect right back so you can see where the powder is at. So again, if you use this, I suggest using it very lightly and making sure that you blend out every single little aspect that you put on there, or else you will get a flashback. You will look a little crazy. And I know it's happened to me. It happened to me in, you know, in the beginning of all of this. But you are free to not to skip this step, the finishing powder. Absolutely unnecessary if you are doing a day-to-day makeup look. However, this I do recommend, even if you are doing a day-to-day, it'll help your makeup stay on your face a little bit longer, a little less greasy if you are a little bit more on the greasy side. However, if you do have dry skin, I would say tread lightly with this, as it might bring out the dry spots on your face. So as long, again, as you moisturize before you should be fine. But if you don't moisturize, if you don't have the time, if you're allergic, you know, that's a thing too. You don't have to necessarily use this or even a powder foundation, because it'll show the little flakes. But if you are kind of in the normal to dry range, you should be fine using this, as long as you don't leave it on there or cake it on too much. Okay, so moving on, we have blush. And I'm sure that everybody, even the most beginner of beginners, knows what blush is. So blush comes in two forms. There is actually three forms. There is a cream form like this one. It doesn't necessarily have to come in a pencil. Sometimes it comes in a stick. But there is this formula right here, which is sort of like a cream. And as you can see, it's very intense. And again, you can just take a brush, a very dense brush, and kind of buff it out, and it should blend right in. There's also this powder one. This is actually one of my favorites. I don't have a pan for it, unfortunately. But this is actually one of my favorites. It's very pigmented. So I would tread very lightly when using something like this. It's by Ofra Cosmetics. This I actually got in an Ipsy subscription that I have. But I believe Ofra Cosmetics is a little bit on the pricier side. You can definitely use something like Wet n Wild. They do have really good blushes. You can use e.l.f. I personally haven't used e.l.f., but a lot of their products, for the price that they are pretty decent. So especially if you're not really into blushes, I would definitely try something like that. They tend to be a little bit lighter, a little bit more sheer, so that you're not looking crazy when you have like just a pink streak on your face. So for both of these, it comes to preference. If you like having, you know, a little bit more of a pinky undertone, I guess, I would go with something like this. This kind of shines through. You would put this before, again, all of the powders, because again, if you put powder and then you try to put this on, it's not going anywhere. You're gonna look crazy. It's not gonna budge. It's just gonna be sitting on top of your face. But if you do put it on before your powders, it'll kind of look like it's coming from within you and not from on top, like sometimes the powders do tend to look like. I tend to prefer the powder. It's something that I learned how to control, something that I know how to put and where to put it. If you want to go with something like cream, you are absolutely welcome to. Creams are a little bit harder for myself to put on, but not impossible. Usually what I tend to do is I'll go in on my hand, put a little bit of product on there, and then grab a beauty blender or a brush and kind of do it on my hand first so that it picks up some of the product, and then lightly kind of just tap it on my cheeks on where I want them to be. Usually they tell you to like smile and kind of put it in this part of your face. What I tend to do is I actually just kind of like kind of smirk, I guess, and then just put it, I don't put it on the really beginning of my cheeks. I wouldn't suggest you doing that either. I have a 2-finger rule, which is if you were to hold 2 fingers up, this is where I'm going to start my blush. Reason being is if I put the blush on the very fronts of my cheeks, it kind of tends to make my face look a little bit flat and just kind of overall weird, especially if I do the contour. So I tend to go with the natural flow up my cheekbones with just kind of like doing one of like a little smirk sort of thing. Again, if you do put a little bit too much of this on, I would suggest going back with your setting powder, veiling it, making sure to diffuse it as much as you'd like. And if you do decide to go with something like a cream blush, I would suggest doing this before you do your powder. Reason being is if you have your powder on before you do any other kind of cream, it's gonna kind of make a mess and you're not gonna be able to blend it out. No matter how hard you try, no matter what brush you use, it's just not gonna happen for you. So again, for beginners, I would suggest going with something a little bit like easier, something like powder. Ofra is really good, very pigmented. However, they are a little bit on the pricey side. So I would suggest sticking with something like Wet n Wild or e.l.f. if you are a beginner. They have a lot of really good things. You should really check them out. They're kind of inexpensive. I actually do have a few Wet n Wild ones that I don't have with me right now, but again, Ofra, if you want to kind of take that jump into getting really, really high quality things, or you can start with Wet n Wild, which has really good, quality things. They will just not maybe last as long, or they won't be as pigmented, which with blush though, I kind of feel like that's a good thing, especially if you're a beginner and you go a little blush crazy. All right, so moving on to the contouring powders. So this comes in a set like this, and this is actually a dupe to the Kat Von D's Shade and Light, which is $50, unlike this, which was, I believe, $9. So this, much like the creams and concealers that you use beforehand to contour, you would use this the same way. Doing the same technique, grabbing the darker ones depending on what skin tone or where you're at, because everybody has like a summer shade and a winter shade. So depending on where you're at, you would use these right here to set the concealer or foundation of a darker color on your cheekbones, on your nose, on your forehead, on your jawline. The lighter ones tend to go very lightly. I usually use it very lightly, right under your skin, right under your eyes, not your skin, right under your eyes, and down the bridge of the nose, on the chin, and on the top of the forehead to set everything. Again, you would go through these shades based on where you're at in color. If you are in the winter stage of your skin color, you wouldn't go with something like this because that would be very, very harsh. It would be very, very harsh contrast. It wouldn't look natural. And again, while you are wearing makeup, and it does look like you're wearing makeup because obviously my eyes aren't, multicolored like they are right now, you wouldn't want to go with something that makes it look crazy makeup. You want to make sure that you go with something a little bit lighter so that it looks a little bit more natural, especially if you're going to go take pictures or do something in film. Even though in film you have to go a little bit harder because the camera tends to not grab as much color as if you are looking at somebody directly in the face. So as you can see me right now, I'm bringing a lot more. If you were right up here and close and personal with me, you could see how much makeup I have on. I don't do this on an everyday. I don't go out looking like this. I tend to go a little bit lighter when I do go out. But for you guys and for the camera, I do like to dress it up and go a little bit harder. So I tend to go with something like this for it to show up on camera. But I wouldn't wear something like this to go out. I would probably go with the middle shade. And in the winter, I'd probably go with this right here because that's just the lighter shade. It looks a little bit more natural. It looks like it's coming from, your skin and not from something that you're putting on your skin. All right, so I'm gonna talk to you a little bit about bronzers, even though I personally don't like to use them. The reason being is I like my face to be matte. Except for the highlight that I do put on and that I do choose to put on my face, I don't like the shimmery, I guess like brown shades that come with the bronzers. It's supposed to give you this nice sun-kissed glow, and it's supposed to kind of bring the life back to your face after you've put on your, if you put something like a full coverage foundation, and especially if it's matte, it'll leave your face looking one color, very one color, not shiny, and very flat. So that kind of helps put the shimmer and shine back in your face. It is personal preference if you'd like to use it. If you do like to use it, you basically put it on where the sun would hit you naturally, right? So if you are standing outside, picture, you know, where the sun would hit your face. So usually it's like the forehead, top of the cheeks, sort of like the chin a little bit, maybe down the nose, a little bit on the Cupid's bow. Again, I don't like the shimmery part of it because there is a shimmer to it. And I know there are some matte ones that kind of look just like the ones right here. And you can kind of just take those lightly. This is what I do if I'm a little too flat. I usually go for one of these two, usually the middle one, just because it has a little bit more of a golden tone to it. And I'll take a really fluffy brush, dip it in there a couple times, you know, shake the excess off, and then just kind of sweep it all over my face just to kind of bring back that glow, so that I don't look so flat. Again, it's a personal preference. I don't like it, so I don't tend to buy it or use it. I don't have any in my collection, to be honest with you. I usually tend to go again with something like this, very matte, nothing really shiny except for the actual highlight that I do have. If you have a very light skin, I would suggest going for something a little bit on the, like, it's almost like a pale rosy kind of brown look. I was just going for something like that. It looks more natural. If you are medium toned, you should probably not use any like rosy pinky things because it'll look like a blush and not really like a bronzer. And it kind of tends to wash you out. So I would suggest something a little bit more coppery, but very, very subtle. Obviously you wouldn't, you know, want to have just copper all over your face, but something very coppery, very soft, like beigey kind of, so that it brings the color back to your face. And again, for my really dark skinned ladies, depending on how dark you get with the sun, I would suggest going with something a little bit more golden. The golden tends to just look a lot better with you guys. It, you know, it brings the life back into you. I know that Wet n Wild does have 3 different ranges of colors. I'm not really sure of any. Again, I don't really use it, so I don't really look for it. But you can definitely look at, I know BH Cosmetics has a kit that you can, that's for bronzing. I think it's Carly Bell, the one who does it. She's one of the beauty gurus in the community. I believe she has a bronzing palette, and there is, I know e.l.f. has a little quad, basically 4 little things that they do have, one for light skin, one for medium skin, and one for dark skin. So if you guys do want to invest in something like that, and you guys do like that shimmery kind of like, you know, healthy bronzy glow, then definitely go for it. You can buy those for fairly cheap. I believe Wet n Wild goes from $4 to $5. e.l.f. does the same thing, about $5. I believe the Carly Bell one has to be about $13 to $15 if I'm not mistaken, and they are on BH Cosmetics, so you can check that out if you'd like. Again, everything that I just shown you comes down to personal preference. Not everybody is going to, you know, like something like this, a primer like this. Not everybody's going to want to buy a $30 primer, and that is absolutely fine. Everything comes down to personal preference and what you're comfortable with using. With all of this, I do suggest kind of taking, especially if you have sensitive skin, taking a little bit and kind of putting it on a part of your face, or even on the wrist or on your hand, just to make sure that you don't have an allergic reaction to it. Luckily, I have never had an allergic reaction to anything here that I've just shown you, but you know, you can't be too safe, especially when it comes to your face. You don't want to put it all over your face and then discover that you are severely allergic to a powder or to a setting spray or anything like that. So this concludes part 1. Please stick around for part 2. That'll explain everything to do with the eyes and eyebrows and all of that good stuff, lips. So make sure to like and subscribe. All of my social media handles will be down below, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.